friends. This is another episode of Empire of Lies, where we discuss manipulation and disinformation in the Russian media. Russia isn't just fighting on the front lines, what Solovyov's new speech teaches us. In the latest episode of Sunday Evening, Vladimir Solovyov once again doesn't simply comment on the news, he formulates an ideology. This isn't a TV presenter's retort, but a concentrated manifesto. Russia lives by the logic of constant war, which demands systemic governance, the militarization of the economy, contempt for the West, and the certainty that Putin's diplomatic victory is already assured. For European readers, what matters isn't how he speaks, with irritation, sarcasm, and studio applause, but what he actually says. Behind the rhetoric of order and efficiency lies a desire to completely erase the boundaries between the state, the army, and society. And behind it lies the open expectation of a new political order, where force replaces law and dialogue between countries turns into bargaining between leaders. 1. Call for a war state. Solovyev begins not with war, but with the system. He says that Russia has been at war for a long time and must now restructure itself for wartime, remove the paperwork, appoint a single person in charge, and act here and now. He cites Molotov and Beria as models of efficiency, figures associated not with modernization, but with repression and total control. In this logic, administrative procedure is the enemy of victory, and the law is a brake. If the country is at war, one-man command is needed, he says, thereby justifying a political vertical that tolerates neither doubt nor scrutiny. This is not a technical complaint, but an ideological framework. Anything that doesn't follow orders becomes hostile. The purpose of such speeches is not simply to strengthen military discipline, but to legitimize a state where mobilization becomes the eternal norm. 2. The cult of iron and the transformation of war into an engineering project. Then Solovyov turns to the topic of armaments. He discusses Soviet tanks, optics, mechanics, and awkward sights in detail, pretending to be talking about engineering. In reality, this is a hymn to militarization. The TV presenter discusses how quickly recruits should learn, how a little modernity should be added to old iron, and how it's also simple. Behind this lies an important idea. All of society is a resource for war. He doesn't call for peace, he demands efficiency. Don't ask why war is fought, but rather improve how it is fought. Thus, war becomes not a tragedy, but a production process. It is measured by the speed of repairs, the accuracy of drones, and the cool-down time after firing. For Europe, it's important to recognize this not as techno-optimism, but as a new norm. War as a way of life, as a form of internal order. Of course, this is constantly evolving, but this is what the war of the future will look like, and we must prepare for it now. Although, it should be noted, this week we were able to breathe a sigh of relief. While we were seriously discussing what a patriot is, what its characteristics are, and what this will lead to, after this week's main event, the phone call between the Russian and US presidents, everything suddenly took on a completely different look. We discussed this with Kirill because Kirill is undoubtedly the leading expert on Trump in our country, having deeply studied the man's psychology, having read all his books and carefully studied their biographies. He always prepares for a trade deal through outright strengthening. Dmitry accurately noted this pressure, and then suddenly this moment arrives. Whoops, we didn't expect it. Here's a reversal for you. That's what happened. 3. A phone call as a symbol of a new global hierarchy. The second part of the program is devoted to the phone call between Putin and Trump. In the Russian interpretation, this call is not just a diplomatic event, but a turning point of an era. Solovyev reiterates, after the main event of the week, everything began to look completely different. Europe is not a participant here, but a backdrop. The main actors are Moscow and Washington. Everything else is background and extras. The presenter declares Zelensky, whom even the British are mocking, to be the main loser. Orban, he says, on the contrary, turned out to be the only rational European because he is ready to host Putin and Trump in Budapest. This isn't just the joy of diplomatic success, it's a restoration of the old world view. Two superpowers deciding the fate of Europe without Europe. Ukraine is just a place on the map where the demarcation line is being drawn. The EU is a humiliated spectator. Hungary is a reasonable exception. 4. Europe as an object of contempt. After the geopolitical bloc, a whole tirade against Europe follows. Solovyov scolds Austria and Switzerland for abandoning neutrality, calling them idiots and dummkopfs. Germany is accused of new militarism, and the European protests or demonstrations against Trump, according to him, are urban warfare, where the West loses the right to lecture anyone on human rights. This isn't random rudeness, it's a consistent strategy to undermine Europe's moral superiority. You've been on the Empire of Lies program. See you soon.